the Bolweg. Alright, you are watching Art and History with the Bolweg, and here we are doing our very first YouTube video. We will be covering what is called a still life. Now, still lifes are pretty straightforward. They're simply a drawing or a painting or any sort of image making, really, of objects that are beheld before you. Now, the one important thing with regards to steps on how to do a still life is it's preferable not to actually work from a photo, but rather to work from a particular set of objects that are directly before you. You'll see it actually is quite a different set of skill required for it and has quite a different result when compared to drawing from a photograph. Now, the first thing we're going to look at when looking at our still life is where on the page it is going to sit with regards to composition. You always want to have a small and equal gap between the left and the right and the top and the bottom sides of the page. And the other thing you want to be really careful of is you want to make sure that the image in front of you, you have the right amount of width to height. Now, what I identified in this particular video was I had 6 units of measurements across to the left to right and 5 from top to bottom. So here we're just having a look at Bob the Cup and the ink again, and we're jumping straight into it. Now, the beginning part of this drawing is rather rudimentary and simple. The point is I'm not a photocopy machine, so it's a process of carving away at the surface of the paper, carving away into what you're trying to make sense of, what's before you. And a lot of the time you're going to make constant mistakes. Now, depending on the medium you're working with, those mistakes can be a little less or more forgiving, but that's not too much of a concern, actually. It's more that you can see quite a lot in my drawing technique. I've got this very quick, sketchy type touch to things. Of course, I don't actually draw that quickly, but I just want you to have a look at this one thing that I wanted to point out here. A lot of people make the mistake. When drawing curved edges is to make that rugby ball sort of pointed edge. Avoid that. You always want things to look curved, so it doesn't look like someone stepped on your cup. But anyway, as you may have noticed, the video is particularly sped up. I don't want you guys sitting through a whole hour-long real-time watch of this video. I would run out of things to say, and I imagine you might get a little bit bored. But anyway, so you can see I'm constantly coming forwards and backwards, erasing, working away on, building up on particular little sections. And you'll also notice there's another particular aspect I've put into this drawing, and that are those arrowed lines going diagonally across the image. Now, that is my measurement of angles. So you see you've got the top measurement measuring the top of the cup to where it sits along the brow of the skull. You've got that middle diagonal line measuring from where the nose of the skull is to the top of the ink jar, and we've got that bottom diagonal measuring where the teeth of the skull are to the bottom of the ink jar. Now, these angle lines are quite useful. I haven't used them terribly much in this particular drawing because I'm drawing more organic shapes as opposed to geometric shapes standing next to each other. I'm relying a little bit more on looking on the particular image. Now, you can't really see from my side of things here, but although I'm drawing onto the computer as it is now, I'm actually paying very close attention to the skull, the ink jar, and the coffee cup in front of me. Constantly looking at what's in front of me and coming back down to the page and putting that little bit of detail onto the page. Of course, well, not really a page, it's more of a computer screen, but yeah, it's difficult to film a page. So now to jump back and look at Bob and things, I want to show you that I've started to work onto the tonal values. With this particular setting in the drawing, I've changed this tool that I'm drawing with a little bit. When it comes to your drawing on paper, I'm going to advise that you either start pressing harder or switch to your 8B, 9B, the highest B setting pencil that you can get your hands on. And it'll really help you with those nice dark areas. Now, another thing you're going to slowly start noticing with the progression of this drawing is that as I add those tonal values, as I add those shadows, it becomes a little bit more three-dimensional. It doesn't just add interesting surface detail and texture. It's really a way to create that level of depth in the drawing. Of course, with ink, I mean, it's capturing exactly how light or dark it is. But when I get back to the skull and the cup, you're going to see that those details that I'm drawing in with the shadows are going to change from what you're seeing to something mostly of lines and outlines to something quite a lot more three-dimensional with quite a lot more depth and detail to it. Now I must admit, this particular ink jar, the image that was before me as opposed to what I was trying to achieve here is actually quite different. There was a lot more reflection and light captured in the ink jar. But as time was of the essence in this particular video, and I had to get it out in a day, I wasn't paying that much attention to the beautiful little play of light that flickered across the ink jar. There are quite a lot of things that you would be able to observe, particularly in a still life drawing, that sometimes you're just not going to always get the detail in that you want. Now, what I'm doing at this point is quite an important thing to observe. Although I'm drawing it a bit darker than it actually is, I'm building up that shadow that's falling across the cup, both set by the ink jar and by the natural light of the room. And I'm bit by bit building up that particular shadow. It's going to change that cup into something a lot more exciting, a lot more interesting. And that is really what I'm looking for. So now we jump back to Bob the cup and the ink jar, just so you guys can have a look at roughly what I'm looking at. As you can see though, compared to the photograph, my perspective is slightly higher up. And that particular jump was so that I could select a different pen setting for the drawing. So I've now selected a much thinner, much lighter pencil, digitally. You would do this perhaps by sharpening your pencil, or what I would prefer to do is just going to be pressing lighter on the page. My personal preference is to always, when drawing, work with an 8 or a 9B. That is a personal preference. Some people may think otherwise. And much my tonal value, or the darkness and shadow that I'm achieving, if I was working on paper, would be determined by how hard I'm pressing on the paper. Very often I find when you work with an H or an HB, you can end up scratching into the paper, but still not getting that lovely darkness, and it's very much that darkness, that contrast between dark and light, which makes your images jump. You may notice, especially around the skull, it's more obvious with regards to the cup, but I'm really paying quite a lot of attention to maintaining as much of the white tonal values as possible, because it'll basically make those darker tonal values particularly jump out and look a little bit more interesting. Oh, excuse the little wobbly. Now, so I'm building up the last finer bits of the details, and yes, that's pretty much, we're going to get to the end of the image of what the still life drawing is eventually going to look like. But overall, this is your basics behind a still life. Bit by bit, coming back to, I find a lot of drawing is a push and a pull process. Sometimes you're erasing away at it, sometimes you're adding on darker layers. Of course, if you're working with a medium like pen or ink, sometimes there's no forgiveness for those mistakes, but I don't want you guys to worry about that now. Alright, so that was our video on still life. Now I hope you enjoyed that, so hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, and look forward to future videos. They will be coming up, especially during this particular Corona season. Hope you guys stay safe, and I look forward to your viewership. Have an epic day.